Consumers don't always want to hear directly from brands. So we're seeing more and more the importance of, third parties such as creators and influencers play that role for us. Often it's a very easy conversation if the brand is meaningful to them that they can, take it from there and talk about their own personalized experience with our brands. And that's what's really exciting and helps kind of establish the brand equity as we start to define and shape what this new paradigm of media connection points are.
Welcome to the Female Quotient Equality Lounge here at Cannes. This is our Culture Creator series, and I'm so excited to be sitting here with Kelly Kavanagh. Kelly is the U.S. Integrated Marketing and Media Lead at Haleon, looking after brands like Advil, Tums, Linnaeus, and Centrum. And I'd love to start by, we have a lot of people watching who are probably getting started in their marketing careers and want to know, what is integrated marketing? So how would you explain it to somebody who is outside of that role right now?
Yeah, I would explain it as making sure that all of the spokes on the wheel are connected. There's, when you go into marketing, you kind of choose a field and choose a lane. And I started my career in paid media, but you quickly realize that it's not just about placing an ad in a spot, but also making sure that the creative is relevant, the message is showing up in a meaningful way, and that there's connection points to other touch points that you're building for your brands. So the integrated marketing team really focuses on bringing together the interagency teams with the intent to really make sure that our brands are showing up in the most relevant, connected way from, the touch points that we have that are just driving awareness and brand equity, all the way down to ensuring that consumers are finding a meaningful connection with our brands and getting converted to drive that purchase.
So in an age where social media algorithms are more and more personalized, how do you like to think about your brand staying relevant?
It's an interesting challenge because relevancy changes a lot too. But when we talk about that old saying of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, it's what comes first, the brand or the consumer. And at Haleon, we feel really strongly we need to start with the consumer. So understanding who our consumers are, what their need states are, and then trying to understand how our brand could fit to deliver and support their health and wellness journey is what's most important to us. The ways we do that is obviously some, traditional research. We do a lot of social listening, connecting with our agency and media partners, because there's a wealth of information and resources out there. So just partnering with the right people to talk through things. And what we're really starting to just crack the nut on is agentic marketing. So leveraging the use of Gen AI agents and having that kind of free conversation with those agents to ask those questions about our consumers is a really interesting thing that this industry is heading towards, that I'm excited to see where it takes us.
Absolutely. And when you talk about social listening, I think one thing that comes to mind a lot is trends, right? Everyone wants to be trendy. Everyone wants to be like Duolingo. But you work with brands that are in a highly regulated space sometimes.
Yeah.
So how do you think about trends? How do you think about participating in trends, maybe ignoring some trends and not being part of them, and then leading the way and starting trends yourself?
Yeah, we've really started to shape how we work. And you're right, we are, a fairly regulated business. We are a health and wellness solutions consumer over-the-counter product organization. And we feel really strongly about that and want to respect our consumers and make sure that we are not positioning our brands in any way that would compromise the integrity of them with our consumers. So it's a delicate balance. I think where we've seen the most success is letting our marketers kind of push it a little bit, but have those conversations early with our legal, regulatory, medical, to say this is the context of what we feel like we can and should say, and working with our partners in the organization to understand what's responsible to say, what can be said, what doesn't make sense. And it's an easy conversation when you build that partnership early on. In terms of, how we think about that as we head into the new territories, is you're right, driving relevancy. Consumers don't always want to hear directly from brands. So we're seeing more and more the importance of, third parties such as creators and influencers play that role for us, and giving them our reason to believe for our brands and helping understand who that creator is, what's important to them. And often it's a very easy conversation if the brand is meaningful to them that they can, take it from there and talk about how their own personalized experience with our brands. And that's what's really exciting and helps kind of establish the brand equity as we start to define and shape what this new paradigm of media connection points are.
You fully anticipated where I was going, because I think a lot of what you're saying comes back to this question of trust.
Yes.
Right. And who do consumers trust and what do they trust? And And in a world of AI, sometimes that's less and less certain as well in terms of the content that they're consuming. So I think something like 69% of consumers do trust creators or influencers more than they do brands directly.
Yes.
So how do you think about where influencer fits in the marketing mix in your role?
I mean, it's becoming a more and more important topic, and more. We've really been pleased with the trajectory that we've really been pushing our brands to take on this journey. About 2 years ago, we really, identified an influencer agency of record and really started to shape the process and the ways of working and rolling onto the marketers of this is how you need to be thinking about it, developing playbooks for them. And we've seen a lot of adoption. There's still plenty more to be done. Sometimes there's some limitations just with some of the platforms because we are a fairly regulated, especially across some of our specific brands, specifically a pretty regulated industry. So, but yeah, I mean, we really recognize the value of those creators and partnering with creators for both short-term and long-term communications. And it's becoming, I think the average in the industry that we've been looking at is 10% of an A&P is against creator influencer, and that's something we're striving to as an organization. It's not always easy, especially because we do have a responsibility to our shareholders and to drive the growth that we know, and there's a hurdle that we have to get over of something that hasn't necessarily been quantified and proven yet. But we're all consumers and we're consuming creator information ourselves, right? So we see and understand the trust that we have in ourselves. So it's easy once you put yourself in a consumer and remind yourself that you're a person and a consumer. It's a lot easier to become a marketer when you think about those things. So it's a pretty interesting place right now to see where the creators are going and helping shape this industry.
We agree. And I think when we talk about influencers and creators, people's minds usually go first to social media, right?
Yes.
Organic and maybe paid, but we like to talk about creator content everywhere.
Yes.
So whether it's the billboards lining the Croisette in Cannes this week, or CTV, which has been a huge area of growth for us, or even Super Bowl commercials are now having creators in them rather than or with celebrities.
Yeah.
So how do you think about creator content fueling that wider ecosystem rather than just social?
Absolutely. I mean, we have, you start with the creator and on the social platform because that is kind of the core. But I think actually if you look at all of the media fragmentation going on, it's really interesting to think about how all of the different connection points need to have those consistent experiences. So we start with, okay, our anchor is the social, is the organic social coming from the influencer, leverage that in our own paid social. We have a performance marketing team that's been doing a lot of testing and measurement to take those creator-led assets and how do they play out and what's the right editing and experience across those different touch points. And we've seen tremendous success from CTV experiences all the way down to even, sponsored video ads on e-com search. And it really, to that point, there is such a trust and relevancy that the creator assets drive that much more effectiveness for our business. So it makes perfect sense. We also have an in-house production studio that's building the capabilities to take those assets themselves and help adjust and adapt. And it's not always necessarily working with influencers, but it's influencer-like assets too, that experience, which Sensodyne's been experienced with for years. For years and years, we've had the expert voice in our TV commercials. And in many ways, it's the number one influencer for something like a sensitive toothpaste like Sensodyne. And we had kind of this established foundation of understanding that there's a value in that third party voice representing a brand. So as the industry started to change to creators and influencers really having a voice for brands, it was an easy thing for at least the Haleon folks to start to wrap their head around, knowing that we'd seen such success historically on Sensodyne.
Yeah, and more dentists and dental hygienists and other HCPs are becoming influencers in their own right as well, which we'd love to see. It's a whole different revenue stream for them.
Absolutely.
And they bring that education to a space where we know a lot of people are seeking health advice, medical advice, and turning to before going to their doctor. Kelly, we'd love to end on a few rapid fire questions.
Okay.
If you're ready for it.
Seatbelt on.
So first up, what does your For You page look like?
For my page? Yeah. Whatever I've been talking about with people, right? It's so funny. It's, I was going through stuff last year and it was like, oh my God, my phone is definitely listening to me. And that is personalized and a little bit creepy, but depending on what you're experiencing, it's actually really helpful. I was joking yesterday, somebody was asking me what's my next big purchase And I was like, I really need to buy a new car. And they were saying, how are you going to go about researching it? And I was like, my hope is I'm just going to be talking about it enough in front of my phone that my phone will tell me what to buy.
The car's going to find you.
The car is going to find me. I have a puppy, so I get all the doodle assets just to scroll through. And, at the end of a long day, you just like to decompress and enjoy those assets. And then the general pop stuff and I have 3 teenage kids, so it's all sorts of content for how to make sure that you will like your teenagers by the time they become adults, because it's a tough age.
If you were an influencer yourself, what would your content niche be? What would you be putting out there into the world?
Oh boy. I think for the most part, I would probably have a sense of humor. For me, it's like, I try to have a balance of connecting with people and really understanding. I'm not the greatest at it, but I think emotional, like EQ is important, and I would love to have that. But there's always, I believe in taking life, with a laugh. So whatever I do, I think I'd be trying to make sure that people are enjoying watching it.
I love that. And finally, we started by talking about people who are setting out in this industry, trying to find their place. So if you had one piece of advice for early career marketers who are watching right now, what would that be?
I think it would definitely be stay open to different types of experiences. Growing up in the media industry, especially when I started in the media industry, there were generalists, and I started really as a generalist, where I had the opportunity to learn about all the different media platforms, and I continued in my career to do that. As it's become so much bigger, so much more fragmented, you see that there's specialized roles that people are hired for, and that's great and it's needed to help drive the business. But it could be a little tricky for those individuals, because if they stay in that lane too long, they don't necessarily get the broader generalized experience. And where you see senior leadership is the folks that can speak across and in a broader breadth. So I would just encourage people to be, even if you're enjoying that, subject matter expertise that you're focused on right now, be open to the new opportunities and experiences. A couple of years ago, I was doing all, full funnel and upper funnel media, and I had the opportunity to work on digital commerce specifically. And it felt a little uncomfortable, but I decided to go for it, and it has only helped build my experience, my reference points, the context for how I do all the other components of my business and my job that much better.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for being so generous with your time.
This has been great. Thank you.
And I know it's a very busy week, and
thank you.